Good morning, everyone, and it is not just a pleasure but an honor to be sitting amongst stalwarts working the space of restorative practices, not just on the panel but in the audience as well. Uh, when I was asked to be part of this August conference and to moderate this panel, I wondered why I was chosen, but when I spoke to the panelists here, I recognized why. Uh, we need to recognize that society, law, medicine, religion, faith are such big institutions, so big that they dictate what is fair, what is harm, what is survival, and what resilience looks like. And because of these definitions, very neat buckets of what is good, bad, right, wrong, seem to be made so rigid that we have institutions that are now housing people who these spaces have defined as people who are causing harm. So then how do we imagine care and empathy? And who gets to access this care? And who gets to be empathized with? When we talk about restoration, we always, our commonsensical understanding and our popular understanding is it needs to be survivor-centric. But what happens to people who face harm from the systemic space and whose only space of resilience is harm? So with us, we would like to start this panel with, sorry. Yeah, we'll start with, yeah, just give me a, sorry. With Lakhan and Karan. And we will understand what indigenous forms of restorative justice in Indian prisons look like. And understand what emotional, familial, and social reconciliation also looks like. Over to you.
हेलो एवरीवन। मैं इस दिन की शुरुआत एक कहानी के साथ करना चाहता हूँ। ये एक कहानी है एक लड़के की जिसका नाम अर्नव है। सो बेसिकली अर्नव रहने वाला यूपी का है, जो काफ़ी कुछ पिछले समय से लाइक 6 मंथ से दिल्ली में रह रहा है। और अर्नव दिल्ली में रहकर किसी एक फैक्ट्री में काम करता है, और जहाँ पे अर्नव काम करता है वहाँ पे उसकी एक लड़की से दोस्ती हो गई, जिस लड़की का नाम श्रुति था। तो क्योंकि दोस्ती ज़्यादा लंबे समय तक उनकी चली नहीं, वो एक रिलेशनशिप में आ गए। रिलेशनशिप में आने के बाद जब श्रुति की मदर को पता लगा कि अर्नव नाम का लड़का उसके साथ रिलेशनशिप में है, ये लोग मिलते हैं, बात करते हैं, तो क्योंकि मदर तो मदर होती है, उनको चिंता हुई, उनको डर लगा कहीं उनकी बेटी के साथ कुछ गलत ना हो जाए। तो इसी परेशानी में आकर उन्होंने, जब उन दोनों का मिलना जुलना ज़्यादा होने लगा, तो श्रुति की मदर ने पुलिस में कंप्लेन कर दी। और पुलिस में कंप्लेन करने के बाद क्योंकि श्रुति बिलो 18 ईयर्स थी, तो श्रुति की मदर ने जो कंप्लेन की थी उसके अगेंस्ट पुलिस को एक्शन लेना पड़ा। पुलिस ने जब एक्शन लिया तो अर्नव को अरेस्ट कर लिया गया। अर्नव को तिहाड़ जेल नंबर 5 में भेज दिया गया। तो वहाँ पे मेरी अर्नव से मुलाकात हुई। अर्नव से मेरी ऐसे मुलाकात हुई क्योंकि अर्नव मेरे साथ रहा करता था, हमारी बातें हुआ करती थी, हम साथ में खाया करते थे। तो वो बताया करता था कि कैसे उसका आना हुआ, अभी क्या चल रहा है। तो जेल में जाने के बाद जब अर्नव ने फर्स्ट कॉल अपनी फैमिली को किया, तो जब अर्नव ने बताया अपनी फैमिली को कि मेरे को इस केस में अरेस्ट कर लिया गया है, तो अर्नव के पेरेंट्स थोड़ा अलग माइंडसेट वाले थे। तो उन्होंने सीरियसली मना कर दिया सीधा सीधा कि हम तेरे को सपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे। वहाँ से अर्नव का फैमिली कनेक्शन ब्रेक हो गया। अब जब ये वाली बात श्रुति को पता लगी, तो श्रुति काफ़ी ज़्यादा गिल्ट में फील करने लगी। श्रुति ने अपनी मदर से बात की, और श्रुति ने 1-2 बार सुसाइड अटैम्प्ट भी करने का कोशिश किया। तो जब ये बात श्रुति की मदर को पता लगी, जब श्रुति की मदर को बताया गया श्रुति के द्वारा कि ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, अर्नव के साथ मेरा ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं, कोई रिलेशन, ऐसी कोई ख़ास बात नहीं थी, मेरे को बस वो अच्छा लगता है और मैं उसके साथ रहना चाहती हूँ। तो श्रुति की मदर आज के समय पे जब अर्नव के पास कोई फैमिली सपोर्ट नहीं है, तो श्रुति की मदर ही, उन्होंने ही एक लॉयर कर रखा है अर्नव को छुड़ाने के लिए। वो पर वीक 2 टाइम्स जेल में मुलाकात करने के लिए जाती हैं अर्नव से। कोर्ट में एप्लीकेशंस फाइल कर रखी हैं कि हम ये केस वापस लेना चाहते हैं, मेरी बेटी के साथ कुछ गलत नहीं हुआ। मैं डर गई थी, घबरा गई थी ये जानकर कि मेरी बेटी किसी के साथ रिलेशनशिप में है, कहीं उसके साथ कुछ गलत ना हो जाए। सो मैं ये स्टोरी आपको क्यों बता रहा हूँ, बेसिकली जब हमारे ऑफिस में ये रेस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस को लेके कहीं एक छोटी सी बात चल रही थी, तो ये होता है, ऐसा होता है जब विक्टिम और एक्यूज दोनों मिलकर आपस में बात करके सुलह कर सकते हैं। अदर कंट्रीज़ में किस तरीके से रेस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस काम करता है। जब ये सुना तो मुझे ना तो विक्टिम की साइड याद आया, ना अदर कंट्रीज़ में हो रहा है वो कुछ मेरे को ध्यान आया। मेरे को तुरंत में ये स्टोरी याद आई जिसमें विक्टिम की तरफ से विक्टिम की मदर ही एक्यूज को छुड़ाने के लिए आज पैरोकारी कर रही हैं। उसकी कोर्ट का सारा खर्चा देखती हैं, उसकी मुलाकातें करती हैं, और अपनी बेटी के लिए, वो उनका ये कहना था अपनी बेटी के लिए, जो उन्होंने कोर्ट में एप्लीकेशन भी लगाई कि जब मेरी बेटी बालिग हो जाएगी, मतलब 18 ईयर्स अबव हो जाएगी, तो मैं इन दोनों की शादी कर दूंगी, मुझे उनसे कोई परेशानी नहीं है। और ये तो मेरे सेंस में रेस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस कहीं ना कहीं इंडियन प्रिजन्स में भी किसी ना किसी फॉर्म्स में हो रहा है। तो एक मेरा आइडल एक्सपीरियंस है जो मैंने देखा, जिस लड़के का देखा, तो वो मैं आपके साथ आज शेयर कर रहा हूँ। और दूसरा मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा प्रोजेक्ट सेकंड चांस के बारे में। प्रोजेक्ट सेकंड चांस बेसिकली हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं इंडियन प्रिजन्स को रीइमेजिन करने की, कि इस देश की प्रिजन्स को किस तरीके से देखा जा सकता है, ताकि जो लोग अंदर हैं उन लोगों के लिए रिफॉर्मेशन पे काम कर पाएँ, रिहेबिलिटेशन पे काम कर पाएँ, और प्रिजन्स को थोड़ा रीइमेजिन कर पाएँ कि इंडियन प्रिजन्स एक्चुअली किस तरीके से अंदर रिस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस के फॉर्म्स में भी क्या क्या हो रहा है, कैसे कैसे केसेस हो रहे हैं, क्या परेशानियां हैं अंदर। तो हमारी टीम में मोस्टली जितने भी लोग हैं वो, उनका खुद का एक प्रेजेंट एक्सपीरियंस है, वो अपने एक्सपीरियंस के थ्रू उन प्रॉब्लम्स पे काम कर रहे हैं, अलग अलग सोल्यूशंस पे। तो ये प्रोजेक्ट सेकंड चांस है हमारा। वहीं से मैं हूँ और हमारा कलीग लाखन। मैं लाखन से चाहूँगा वो अपना इंट्रो करें।
Can we just have a show of hands who require translation so that we can make that available? Thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much. Lakhan was talking about a case, he's from Second Chance. So he's talking about a case where this boy Arnav was working, and he got to know this girl Shruthi, who was under 18, and their friendship grew, and they were like in a relationship, like boyfriend girlfriend. The mother got to know the girl's mother and felt scared that there may be some sexual activity going on, and so she filed a POXO case against the Arnav. Arnav was promptly put inside the jail. And he tried calling his family and told them, see, this is the case and this is how I've been put inside. There is actually nothing that has happened. But the family was like, we don't want to do anything with you. So now he's in jail. And Shruthi was feeling very guilty about all of this, that her mother has done this and now he's in jail. So she even tried to die by suicide, but eventually the mother, she told her mother everything, that, you know, it was in this situation and I do really we want to get married once we're older. So the mother understood the situation and the harm that she had done, and she then got the lawyers and put a petition in the court also, whatever it is called, that I want to take back the case that I have filed. And she makes sure that her daughter goes to meet Arnav in the prison twice a week, and yeah, and she's happy to get them married once he's out and she's major. So the project Second Chance is works at reimagining the Indian prisons most of the people who are working in second chance have been in the prison at some point of time, and that is so they feel Lakhan feels that some level of restorative justice is happening with some prisoners in Indian settings also.
Yeah, he's
हेलो नमस्कार साथियों बहुत अच्छा लगा आप लोगों से मिलके। और मेरा नाम लखन है, मैं प्रोजेक्ट सेकंड चांस से हूँ। जैसा कि मेरे साथी करण ने बताया, प्रोजेक्ट सेकंड चांस रिफॉर्मेशन, रीइंटीग्रेशन, रिहैबिलिटेशन पे काम करता है, जो एक्स प्रिजनर की फैमिली और एक्स प्रिजनर के साथ हम मिलके काम करते हैं। तो जैसा कि मेरे साथी करण ने बताया, बाकी सब चीज़ बता ही दी हैं, तो मेरा काम ऑलमोस्ट होता है रीइंफॉर्मेशन पे। मैं ये काम इसलिए कर पाया क्योंकि मेरा खुद का एक्सपीरियंस रहा। 6.5 साल में जेल में था। मैं 18 साल 2 महीने का था तब मेरे साथ इंसिडेंट हुआ, तो मैं चला गया जेल में। तब मैं वहाँ 6.5 साल अंदर रहा, काफ़ी लोगों से मिलना हुआ। तब मुझे लगा कि जेंडर पे काम करना चाहिए, क्योंकि ऑलमोस्ट जितने भी प्रिजनर अंदर हैं 18 साल से 21 साल के बीच में जब मैं था, तो वहाँ पे मैंने देखा तो ज़्यादातर केसेस में वुमेन क्राइम में ही काफ़ी लोग थे। तो ऐसे एरिया से थे जो स्लम वगैरह होती हैं, जहाँ हाई क्राइम रेट एरिया ज़्यादा होते हैं, तो वहाँ के लोग कुछ सोचते नहीं हैं, एकदम से कुछ ना कुछ हो जाता है उनसे ऐसा। तो मैं भी उनमें काम कर रहा हूँ अभी। तो ऐसे काफ़ी लोगों से मेरा मिलना हुआ अंदर। तो ऐसे एक साथी थे मेरे, विनोद नाम था उनका। उनके साथ हुआ था कि उनकी शादी हो गई थी, फैमिली अरेंज मैरिज हुई थी उनकी, लेकिन उनका इशू हो गया फैमिली से कुछ। तो उनकी वाइफ हैं जो ससुराल में रहने लगी, ससुराल से मतलब मायके चली गई। 3-4 साल वो लेने नहीं गए। तो जब ऐसा होता रहा, वो दिल्ली में रहते थे, वो यहाँ आके काम करते थे। तब उनकी फैमिली को लगा कि ये नहीं आएंगे लेने। तब उन्होंने बोला कि हमारा लड़का है, तुम अपने साथ ले जाओ। उनकी फैमिली भी दिल्ली में रहती थी, तो उन लड़के को भेज दिया उनके साथ। वो 12-13 साल का लड़का था, तो उनके साथ आया वो ट्रेन से। तो उसी बीच उनकी फैमिली ने, मनोज के ससुराल वालों ने कंप्लेन कर दी कि हमारा लड़का मिसिंग हो गया है। और वो दिल्ली लेके आ रहे थे, उनके कहने पे लेके आए थे। और तो कंप्लेन हुई, तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुई। तो उनके जब रेलवे स्टेशन से पुलिस पहुंची, तो वहाँ से वो लड़का था वो रिकवर हो गया उनसे। तो अरेस्ट हो गए वो। अरेस्ट होने के बाद वो 6 साल करीब वो जेल में थे। और इस बीच में उनकी जो ससुराल वाले थे, उन्होंने मिलने भी आए उनसे, और केस वगैरह में भी उनकी हेल्प कर रहे हैं। अब कि अभी ये हम तो इनको सबक सिखाना चाहते थे कि ये हमारी लड़की को रख लें। हमें नहीं पता था कि इतना लंबा ये केस खिंच जाएगा। तो ये अभी भी वो इन प्रिजन है, क्योंकि 364A लगी हुई है, क्योंकि पक्की किडनैपिंग है ये। तो इसमें बेल मिलना भी बहुत मुश्किल होता है। तो उस टाइम पे उन्होंने गुस्से में आके पता नहीं क्या क्या लिखवाया हो, वो तो मैं नहीं जानता, उन्होंने नहीं बताया इतना, लेकिन जो था ऐसे बताया। तो मैं यही कहना चाहूँगा कि जो रेस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस की बात चल रही है, दूसरे कंट्रीज़ में भी होता है। तो जितना मैंने प्रिजन में और भी बहुत स्टोरी हैं सुनी हैं और जो बताई हैं लोगों ने, तो ऐसा कोई फॉर्म हो यहाँ पे भी, जब खुद से भी चल रहा है, अगर कोई स्ट्रक्चर ऐसा हो जहाँ रेस्टोरेटिव जस्टिस मिले किसी को, जो विक्टिम और एक्यूज में बातचीत करा के जो सुलह का रास्ता होता है, अगर वो फॉर्म मिल जाए तो क्या पता और ज़्यादा अच्छा होगा।
Thank you so much, Karan ji or Lakhan ji. I think the sharing that, sorry, I think translation is required.
just a brief translation of
Thank
what
you so much, Yuva.
Lakhan has beautifully
Yes.
shared with all of us. So Lakhan also comes with experience from the prison. He's been in prison for 6.5 years himself at the age of 18. When he was there, he met a lot of people and a lot of other prisoners, and then started realizing that a lot of crimes that are happening against women. And so he said that there is a need for him to now work on gender and gender sensitivity, which is what brings him to Second Chance. One of the stories that Lakhan shared with us is about this man named Vinod, who he met while he was in prison. Vinod was married in an arranged marriage situation, and around, after marriage, for 2 to 3 years, his wife returns back to her house and doesn't come back to the matrimonial home. At which point, Vinod goes to, ask her to come back, and they said no, she's not going to come back, but instead they send a small boy from that household named Manoj, who's around 13 years old. After sending Manoj along with Vinod, the girl's family decides to go file a missing complaint, and the police go to the railway station and of course find Vinod and Manoj together and decide to arrest him. And because they see that they've kidnapped him. After being in prison, the in-laws, the girl's family did visit Vinod, and have been paying visits. And what they said was they just wanted to scare him, but they didn't realize that this is how long it's going to be dragged on for, and Vinod still remains in prison at this time. And so what Lakhan says is that, when he looks at RJ and he reads about RJ in other countries, it's like we should have something like this in prisons as well. And if we have victim and offender dialogues, maybe there's a lot of conversation that had come out, and there's a lot of rehabilitation and reintegration that can be possible. So he hopes for this structure and form that can exist in prisons. And that was his story that he relates to while talking about this.
Thank you so much, Yuva, and thank you so much, both Karan and Lakhanji, for sharing your personal experiences and your struggles. And I think it makes us dwell on the understanding and the articulation of how love and desire is being expressed in mainstream and popular culture. And these are reference points for a lot of us to access this definition and articulation. I know this is a popular movie. There's this popular movie called The Bung, where the female protagonist says, "Thappad se pyar dar nahi lagta saab, pyar se dar lagta hai," which kind of legitimizes harm in a very complicated manner. So a lot of us look at harm from a black and white perspective, but a lot of us also relate to harm as a form of love, which is very deeply problematic, yes, but also for some of them that's the only definition of love. And so what also happens is when we access harm in a particular way, how is this institutions and these structures also engaging with that harm? And should harm be dealt with harm is another question that we need to think and ponder. And what kind of harm are we talking about? Is that consequence? And what is that consequence? And can death be that consequence? So to take us further with that conversation, I invite Shruthi to present her thoughts on engaging with prisoners in death row.
Thank you, Ashika. I'm going to try and speak in both Hindi and English so that, So I wanted to set the tone for, मैं Square Circle Clinic नाम की एक संस्था में काम करती हूँ. दिल्ली में ये संस्था है जो फांसी बंदी के केसेस करता है. देश भर में जितने भी फांसी की सज़ा पर लोग हैं उनके केसेस करता है. हमारा ज़्यादातर काम जो है सुप्रीम कोर्ट पर है और कुछ हाई कोर्ट्स में भी हमारा काम है. So I work at the Square Circle Clinic, which provides pro bono legal representation to prisoners on death row across the country. I wanted to set the tone for what I'm going to speak about by reading out a small excerpt from an essay that was published on mitigation and listening a couple of weeks ago. This is an excerpt from an interview that I conducted with somebody who is currently on death row. A is a young man who's currently entering his 40s. He sat on the stool in front of me, looked at the sun for a few seconds. I could see half of his face lit in the sunlight and the other half in the shadow as he covered his forehead with his hand. It was almost as if he was trying to indicate that the spotlight was on him, and he immediately said, "See, no one has gotten an opportunity like this to come and meet me and talk to me, so you make sure that you use this opportunity well." I would be lying if I said that it didn't bother me. It didn't instinctively make me feel that, well, let me remind you that it is you who's on death row, not me. So, stop telling me that it's an opportunity for me. And despite having come prepared for him being quite edgy with me, I was taken aback. It shook me when he spoke to me like that. And he would often tell me that he wanted to know what I'm going to ask him the next day, what was the schedule of my interview, how long am I going to be there. And he would constantly just keep telling me that, you're not coming prepared, just come with a structure next day and, give me the questions in advance so I can prepare for it. And he would often pass like snide remarks if I did not turn up for conducting the interview on a certain day or came late. And he would often say, लगता है आप अपने काम को seriously नहीं ले रही हैं, रोज़ late आने लगी हैं आजकल. The reason I wanted to start with this quote is because this was one of those moments on the field that made me uncomfortable. It challenged me. Questions were asked of me. Self-disclosure was demanded. And it's one of those moments when the silent other took over the interview. I thought I was in control, but I was clearly not. And it is only when I let go of my preconceived notions of what a death row prisoner should look like and act like that I was able to and put myself into as much scrutiny and as much observation as I would take liberties when I'm on the field, that I was really able to, put pieces of the puzzle together. So, and this is what I call listening. We've heard the word listening a lot in the last 2 days, and for me, listening is not just active listening of what the other is trying to say, but also listening to myself, listening to what my positionality is bringing into that space, and what is it doing to the knowledge production exercise that both of us are co-creating. So I'm here to speak about listening as a restorative practice. And I could really resonate when someone here said yesterday that restorative justice is a practice of how we listen, speak, and engage with each other. And I believe that that's at the core of what listening in mitigation investigation is. And often when we talk about listening, I feel like we talk about it as a soft, therapeutic, passive activity, but I think in mitigation it's destabilizing. It does ask you to sit with the fact that the person in front of you, who the system has now already labeled as worst of the worst, is someone who can unsettle your own assumptions, your own thoughts, your own preconceived notions, and maybe even demand things that you are not necessarily prepared to give in that space. And before I get to listening, I just wanted to quickly tell you a little bit about what death penalty mitigation is. So death penalty in India is a very unique kind of a punishment. Because in death cases, the court is not just asking about whether you're guilty of this crime or not. They're also asking if you're guilty, how much can we punish you or how much responsibility can we place on you? And as part of that exercise, the court is appointing a social scientist who goes to the prison, conducts interview with the prisoner, with the family, community, and you're supposed to draft something called a life history report. Now this life history report goes towards asking for a reduced sentence for this person on death row. And I feel like mitigation is really at a very interesting crossroads in India because the system has called someone worst of the worst, and they've decided that this person is not of value to our society. But mitigation is also instituted by the state, but it's asking for this person to be looked at in all of their complexities, in their fullness, with all the different shades of life that we've had. I mean, they want to look at this person's life quite comprehensively. And when I say that the state has decided that they're not of value, I say that because of the kind of narrative that is around once somebody is sentenced to death. So if any of you get a chance to read death sentence judgment from a sessions court, it will have things like this person is a monster, he's an animal, or brute instincts took over this person. Of course, it's not to take away from the fact that these are horrific crimes, but that's the kind of description that the judgments often use. And even in the media, newspaper narrative, you see that there is a certain image that is built of these people. And even when you meet the families, you realize that even basic documents such as, birth certificates, a record of when you were born, or what's your parents' name, or an Aadhaar card, or a BPL card, they'll not have any access to that. So in a way, they are considered unreliable narratives of their own life and their own histories. Because when you take this information to the court, they're like, well, you don't have any documents to prove that they're really poor. or that they've had really traumatic life experiences. And listening in some ways, I think, is a tool that provides a way for these families and the prisoners to articulate their own life and their own vocabulary, their own grammars, instead of imposing like a hegemonic narrative of what you and I might want to think of, what their life is like or what it looks like. And simultaneously, I feel like listening also exposes systemic neglect and structural harm and institutional othering that is at play. So it produces system accountability in a way that it's not only telling you who this person is, but it's also telling you what harm the system has done to them. That's the kind of narrative that it exposes. And I think yesterday I was just thinking, there was a lot of focus on, sometimes all you want to hear is admission from this person that, yes, I've done it. But I feel like it can get so complicated within the criminal justice system, because in a system that is so flawed and skewed, like ours, you don't even know if the person is guilty of the crime, but they are on death row. And for the system to demand that you admit or that you express some kind of remorse, or you show me tangible reformation that you've become a better person, will not go down, the right road, because often the experiences of prisoners and the family show us, the more you inquire about their life experiences, even the binary between victim offender starts to collapse, because you realize that the experiences across the board are same. So I think listening is fundamental, to this exercise, and especially more so when you're working with someone who has caused harm. And I just wanted to end with saying that if lives of death row prisoners teaches us anything, it is that when a system stops listening, it stops seeing. When it stops seeing, it starts discarding. Listening is important because deep, reflexive, and accountable listening is how we begin to reverse this kind of discarding that the system is doing. It restores dignity to those the system has silenced, and it restores truth to the institutions that have forgotten their own responsibility. Because when you're humanizing these people, what you're essentially trying to say is that, well, they are on death row today because the system has failed them in some way. And at this point, it's wrong to say that it's only the individual who's responsible and none of us who have done things to, improve anything in their life in their growing up years. And if we want care in carceral spaces, if we want accountability, then we must start with the simplest act we have, which is to listen. Because when we listen, then no one is disposable. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Shruthi. And a lot of thoughts running in my mind with regard to listening. This reminds me of a paper I read written by Urvashi Butalia, who talks about listening to the silence and how often silence has so much to offer, so much to say, and so much to unpack, right? And also when I'm listening to Karan, Lakhan, also what comes to my mind is also who gets to be the monster. And who gets to be the do-gooder, right? So how people in power, especially the systems like the police force and armed forces, have impunity when it comes to violence, and how ordinary citizens, especially people from marginalized community, are at such a short end of the stick that it pushes them to survive. And sometimes I'm using extreme forms of harm just to survive, right? But resist we must, and in resistance there are so many ways to resist, and art seems to be a wonderful medium of resistance. And when children embrace that, the way we look at restoration, the way we look at addressing harm, and the way we look at celebration completely transforms. So to take us to that journey, I would like to invite Rijul to speak. Please. Thank you.
Just before Rijul, just before you start, has anyone registered for the experiential session that's happening currently in the room?
have a small presentation that I'd like to just. Can everybody see me from here properly? I hope not hidden behind anything. Thank you for those poignant questions and the thought that you left us with in the end. और जब शुरुआत आप दोनों ने करी है सच्चाइयों के साथ, जीवित सच्चाइयों के साथ, उसे फॉलो अप कर पाना बड़ा मुश्किल है. And I think the distinct advantage of speaking to the converted like us is that I don't have to spend time laying out the context too much and the intersection between marginality, exclusion, and apprehension. I think this is going way too fast for my liking, but okay. Is it automatic? Anyway, just not thank you. I'm starting right now, but I'll just keep it here. I sometimes wonder how we got here, and I sometimes wonder if we belong in the space of restorative justice. And I'll come to this in the end. And for now, I'll just tell you that my presentation will be 3 parts. One is I'll talk about how we got here indeed, how we ended up developing an institutional program. Secondly, what are the contours or pillars of the institutional program that we are working on? And then towards the end, I'll let all of you decide if it falls under the category of restorative justice or not. So just to give you clear context, Yuva Ekta was actually a summer theatre program. A summer theatre program that was launched some 20 years ago by my mentor, Punita, and the founder of the Yuva Ekta Foundation. The idea was very simple. Get privileged school kids like me to work with students from marginalized and at-risk communities within different non-profits across Delhi. So I'm a byproduct of that summer theatre program. For a summer, we used to get together with young people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and work on a theatre performance. And that theatre performance used to be scripted with the living realities of our lives. कि हम उस समय में हमारी क्या struggles हैं as we navigate the challenges of the world around us. In that doing, in that creation, we realized that theatre and the arts had a lot of potential to break down barriers and walls. Because for that 1 month, 1.5, 2 months that I was working on that theatre performance, I realized that I wasn't interacting with someone from a different caste or class or community or religion. I was just interacting with somebody who has dreams and aspirations. It brought down walls, it brought down barriers for that 1.5 hours. In one of these performances that we were doing, someone asked us, do you want to work with kids who are completely invisible and marginalized? And Punita said, sure, let's do that. That's when our first foray into an institution that houses children in conflict with law came into being through the arts. There were on and off arts programs that continued to happen, and we developed something called Threads of Humanity, which specifically focused on taking arts and theatre to at-risk spaces, particularly those that house children in conflict with law. There's a very popular term in psychology we call the humanist approach. Very simply put, it believes in the innate ability of humans to transform themselves if given the right tools to do so. So that's how the program began. We kept taking on and off workshop until a few years ago when somebody asked us again, a very prominent figure in the field, hey, listen, you're taking arts and theatre everywhere. Great. We know that you guys are doing work, but do you have data to back up the fact that your work is actually working or not? And that was the turning point, in a way. Because we had no idea before this that we had to actually prove the efficacy of the arts and theatre. हमें लगा कि हम तो जी रहे हैं वो सच्चाई को, that we've seen people benefit, I have benefited, so many others like me have benefited. I'm sure it must be working somewhere. But in that process, I think we realized something. And that's when we went into this institution called the Place of Safety and Special Home in Majnu Katila, Delhi. We went in with the intention of doing an arts-based program for about a year and understanding whether expressive arts can have any impact on the children in the facility, the boys in the facility. And we chose two very nice psychological indicators to judge whether or not that program was having an impact. Once we entered, there was no out. There was genuinely no out. And I'm going back to the arts and theatre space that I was talking about in the beginning. It was somehow able to break down certain barriers and walls and introduce a very important aspect of any intervention, trust, which the boys felt they had never had with any other organization before us. In the 1 year that we were there, we were asked several questions about us, who we are, हम ये क्यों करना चाहते हैं, इसका फ़ायदा क्या होगा. And when we had no answers to give them, apart from the fact that हम सिर्फ अपने लिए कर रहे हैं और आप लोगों के लिए कर रहे हैं, there was a truth that came into existence. We never lied to them. And then they started asking us more questions. ये सब तो ठीक है, can you help us in English? Can you help us learn computer? Can you help us complete our education? And we were dumbfounded completely because we had genuinely no idea where to go from there. Then came the pandemic. The fact that we were completely bamboozled as to ab kya kare. Which is when slowly and gradually things started happening. And when I say we don't know how we got here, the institutional program came into existence. We started introducing little elements here and there. We introduced an education program after the pandemic. We introduced a library program after the pandemic. What we wanted from the department most of all was a realization कि जो हम काम कर रहे हैं उस जगह पर, उसके लिए हमारे पास कोई जगह नहीं थी. There was one classroom that was available in that space where we all used to come together and do our workshops. But we realized when the boys went back to their dorms, they were being faced with the same reality that they were coming from. Which is when we decided, okay, give us a space. We requested the department give us a space. We got a dingy room, completely dingy room, जहाँ पे कंबलें वगैरह store की जाती थी. We converted that into something what we call the Integrated Learning Center. The Integrated Learning Center is a nice, well-painted, vibrant room. It has a library. It has the space for an arts program. It has a space for an education program. It has color. It has sweetness. It has childhood. It has dreams. It has aspirations. It has everything that the children in the facility were denied right from their childhood itself. And currently, as I look back on the 7 years of our journey in one institution now, and the fact that we've expanded to another one, we are doing all this as part of this comprehensive program for the rehabilitation and reintegration of children in conflict with law. I genuinely don't know how we got the name, but we did because we thought that we're trying to work on these aspects for the young children that we work with. There's expressive arts, there's library, there's education, there's sports, there's a vocational training course, there's a radio program. We have an internal broadcast radio now that my colleague and I on Tuesday and Saturdays of every month are there, a live radio station where the boys come in with their requests and we just discuss life endlessly. Look, I can go on and give you beautiful life stories about how there are boys who've come up to us and told us कि अगर आप नहीं होते तो मैं कभी सीख नहीं पाता कि ये सब कैसे करते हैं, भले ही वो drawing हो. I can tell you about case studies where a few of the boys have managed to work on the education program with us and now pursuing higher education and college while they are still in the facility and have got special permission to attend classes. I can tell you everything in terms of case studies. And I can also tell you the fact that building an institutional program doesn't come naturally to us. We're still struggling with the understanding of what's going to happen the next week, whether we will get funding or not, whether this will survive, whether this works, we don't know. We keep doing our assessments and researches and we can share that with you. But what we realized in all this in the last 7 years is that what we are restoring, and that's where I come to the end of my presentation a bit, what we're restoring perhaps is childhood. What we're restoring perhaps is joy, is light, is happiness, a non-judgmental space to just be. a question you asked earlier, should harm be met with harm? And I was reading somewhere outside, can we not provide accountability lovingly? We don't even ask the boys their cases. We have generally no interest in that. If they want to tell us, they tell us. They don't, they don't. What we want to provide through the Integrated Learning Center and through this program is just a space for them to come, relax, forget about everything that's happening outside, and focus on themselves. Perhaps reflect or not, completely up to them. But a space where they can express themselves truly, without inhibition of any kind. We also understand that the institutions are not the best spaces to work in sometimes. Everybody knows the reality of the working institutions, but I also understand the flip side of it. The fact that you're working there with staff and personnel who are perhaps not trained to heal the trauma that the children come with. So what do you do in that circumstance? You impart the same respect and dignity that you have for the child also for the staff, and just listen. Listen, negotiate, understand, reach a common ground, and perhaps one day they'll be in a situation where they say, हमें शायद समझ नहीं आ रहा आप क्या कर रहे हो, we don't know what you're doing, but keep doing, we won't be a hindrance. We'll do open days where we call stakeholders, juvenile justice boards, magistrates, to come and meet the children on the same platform, not a courtroom, and we've done that successfully several times. We're having one next week as well. The idea with the theatre program and the idea with this comprehensive program, and I'll end with this, is to keep breaking the divides, is to keep breaking barriers, is to keep inviting people, is to keep making the space more open, more fluid, more lively, more joyous, just so that somewhere we are restoring dignity, we're restoring faith, we're restoring respect, and most importantly, I think, we're restoring love. That's the idea with which we work with. I only had 10 minutes. My parents took 10 years to understand what I was doing. I hope I was able to do some justice in the 10 minutes I had with you. Keep asking me more questions. We can come to it later. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rijul. You know, when I was listening to you, just going back to the spaces that I'm also working in, and do hear some very similar narrative from children when they come and tell you that wish we had more people who would speak to us and understand where are we coming from, what are our struggles, why we behave a certain way, and what is it that we want to be restored. Because and restorative is something that we have some kind of a universal understanding of it. But if we break it down and see what is it that person wants, what do they want to get restored, right? And unfortunately, we know our systems and structures around us is so institutionalized. So I'm not talking about the physical institutions, but you know, the whole idea and concepts of institutions like law, and that has brought about these very rigid institution structures like prisons, like place of safety, like our observation homes, where very little reformation is happening. Also, attempts for reformation also is very, very difficult. But I also believe that maybe it's very difficult to peg a square peg in a round hole, but we can peg a round peg in a square hole. And circle is probably one of those mechanisms that we can see in understanding and to also bring about a kind of harmony, build trust, and that's something that children are really, really looking for. Somebody who trusts me, and somebody who believes in me even though the entire universe is telling me that I'm not okay, right? So I'd like to invite our next speaker, Sachi, who is bringing some kind of semblance in this very rigid spaces of institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a little confused whether I should go there or just speak. But I just wanted to say to Rijul, ditto. So maybe I don't even need to present anymore. So, but just I wanted to start with, you know, this whole idea of circle way. And we sometimes think of circle as just sitting in circles. It's not just sitting in circles. For me, the way I understood circles was not about sitting in circles, but the fact that you start with relationships. You start with listening. You start with uh, trusting the goodness in each person to be better, be themselves, and knowing that each person is complete and whole by themselves and they are not broken. We don't need to fix anybody. All we need to do is create spaces where people can find their wholeness. And so that's what I feel circle is. May not be what restorative justice is, but I feel like this is the foundation and belief of what RJ or RP can be. And so I want to start with my journey and I may not follow the slides completely, but very quickly when I started working as a bunch of volunteers, we started going to the observation home and children's home in Mumbai. What we saw was 400 children who are in need of care and protection, as well as children in conflict with law, locked up in one long room, which had no hygiene, the place stank of urine, there were open wounds, children from 5 years to 18 years, all locked up in one place. And Sunday we would go there to just bring smiles. The whole program was called Sunday Fun Day, just to bring smiles to the children. It started very, very small. And what was stark was that this place was 15 minutes from my college, 40 minutes from my house in the heart of Mumbai city, and we didn't even know it existed. It really, it was like one of the most shocking things. And as we started spending time with children, we would see these things. The children role-playing, how police was catching them and bringing them. Like the entire system reeked of violence. And this is exactly, yesterday Sujata said one very interesting thing. How can there be restorative justice in cages? And I agree with you completely, because the brick wall is the institution. It has always been, it is like that. And we were discussing yesterday that how it is like a touch me not flower. Something happens and it will just close down. And our only effort in this institution is to breathe life. And is तरीके से कुछ भी अगर उग जाए, if something can be born, then that's enough. So the whole practice at Ashiyana, we have had experience of working across 23 institutions in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Mumbai. And it has been an effort of creating life in these institutions, restoring dignity, restoring love, trust, faith, all of the things that Rijul already mentioned. And there was one really interesting story. There's a boy I met in 2015, I think. And we were negotiating because he was the monitor and he was beating up kids. And we were negotiating and he said, Didi, I want my photograph in the newspaper. I want to be famous. And I was like, wow, that's great. And he's like, I want to be famous and my photograph has to say wanted. And I was like, what do you mean wanted? He's like, yeah, I'm going to murder somebody and become famous. And I was like, no, you can't, because after this, there's Arthur Road jail and this and that and all of that, right? And he's like, no, I won't kill a good person. I will kill a famous criminal and become famous. So in that negotiation, I realized that here's a boy who would come in theft, today thinking of murder. What's the point of these institutions? And can these institutions become spaces of reflection, healing, and transformation? And that's been the effort. Even before I knew what circle process is, or what RJ is, or what these principles are, we began co-creating with the children. This was our first circle back in 2014, when we sat with CNCP children in need of care and protection, saying, if there's one thing you can change in this home, what would that be? And after a long list, one boy pulled up his pant and said, please remove lice from my pants and our rooms. And that began the journey of 20 volunteers, 20 children coming together and cleaning up the space. So one part of it is, how can children become part of the change? How can we break this whole thing that we have to do justice to them? We have to bring safe spaces to them, to us co-creating that safe space. This is a part of our work is about showing when change becomes visible, there is hope inside an institution. Because संस्था में hope होना बहुत मुश्किल है. It's very difficult to feel hopeful. So this is a gate in one of the homes in Jharkhand, and I asked a boy what is it that he would want to change, and he said, please Didi, just remove this black gate, because every time I see this black gate I feel depressed and angry. So they designed this entire home, spaces for libraries, spaces for sukoon ka kona, a peaceful corner. Actually, the interesting thing was this was supposed to be a bhoot room where girls would not go ever, and we converted into a sukoon ka kona. circles are one part of our work, but circles are in everything that we do. So co-creating values, being in relationship with each other becomes a part of that. I'm going to move a little faster because I think soon she'll show me that card. So in institutions where there is so much uncertainty with regards to your bail, when you will get out, what will happen, practices become the anchor. Daily practices become an anchor. So we would start our days with check-in circles. We introduce food rituals where they would sit in silence together and eat. They would eat with music once a week, eat in candlelight dinner once a month. So those kind of things. Every day they would do a mood check-in, write diaries, bring music in. We had a band, actually a band in Bastar where the kids started writing their own songs. So a lot of these things came up. One of the other things that happened is we started understanding that children didn't have any respect in the home, but also in their family. So when we created these initiatives of, making diyas or whatever and selling them, the money they gave back to their families, and from there suddenly the family started looking them in a different way. So that, again, building relationships has been our way. I feel like this whole idea that we are in a relationship with people has been something that we've kept working at. Whether it's in the institution, the first time we went inside the institution, while the volunteers would be inside, we would be sitting out with the caretakers and talking to them, knowing about their family and everything, so that they are not disturbing the others. But actually in that process, what happened is we were able to influence them and make them see who children really are. So these are some of the initiatives. I want to talk about this really beautiful event. It's actually an old one, but in 2016, for the first time, children in conflict with law went out and performed a stage show at Mumbai's biggest dance floor, right, Shanmukhanand Auditorium. But through that process, in that 20-30 days when we were practicing, first of all, the institution opened up. Suddenly, it was okay for the children to practice and for us to be inside the institution from 6 in the evening to 11 in the night, which is rare in our childcare institution. Second, the staff, this person is actually a guard. He's a caretaker. And he is helping the kid make the props. So we saw relationships just like it didn't matter. The time didn't matter. What these kids were in did not matter. Their labels did not matter. All of those things just kind of, faded. And then when these kids performed and came back, there was one really beautiful incident where the children were taken in a bus and police escorts these children. So children wanted to sit by the road, by the window. And the police said, Kya hai? Everybody sit inside. And all these kids were very grumpy and like, no, we want to sit on the window side. We won't go. It's like, please sit down now. We have to go to the venue, right? So the police, so they sat, they finished the performance, but on their journey back home, it's not like the police gave them the windows, but they showed them their own dance on their phones that they had recorded, right? And with earphones, and I literally have a picture which I couldn't find where one earphone set is in the police's ear and the other one is in the child's ear. And that is all about breaking boundaries and building relationships. We did cooking together events, all of these things. One of this is a highlight because this is a candlelight dinner that we do every Diwali in all the institutions. And I feel like somehow we not just deprive people in institutions of the festivals, but also joys and memories. And yes, it could be argued that, maybe this place will become so much better than their homes that suddenly people put people into institutions itself. I don't think that's happening. But yeah, this is one of the most special experiences that everybody has because everyone eats together. Lastly, I just want to talk about the play. This year, 19 boys, children in conflict with law, performed a show, 1 hour professional play, which was performed at seven shows at 5 different locations. And just in that space, we saw boundaries merge. Suddenly, it was not children and us. There were people from different strata of society just appreciating the kids. The kids got a chance to be on stage. And somewhere I felt like in all of this, something inside them showed that there was another way possible. There's a little video some parts of it are not blurred yet, so please excuse me on this. I want to show it, but please do not record it. On है? Okay.
तो मेरे को ये लगता है कि 1.5 साल से जो जंग हो गई थी मशीन, वो सब चलने लगी वापस. जो बंद पड़ा था पुर्जा उर्जा सब हिल रहा है.
ड्रामा में रैप करने भी मिल रहा है.